Okay, in this lesson, we're going to complete the theme that we've been developing in the first two lessons, 1A and 1B, by using an entire Ordnance Survey map this time to consider evidence from the whole area of an Ordnance Survey map, not just from the immediate grid square or the surrounding 8 grid squares. So in our first two lessons, 1A and 1B, we thought about the actual site itself. And in that lesson, we thought about how the relief of the land, whether it was flat or not, the drainage, whether it was prone to flooding or not, local transport access, the potential for future developments, expansion, and also potential local conflicts, how they might all influence the actual site. In the following lesson, we thought about the surrounding grid squares, so what lies within about 1.5 kilometers of the site being considered that might influence development. What we're now going to think about is the entire Ordnance Survey map. And at the same time, you're also now going to be required to use actual grid references because you're going to be using the whole map. You'll be encouraged to continue to use the scale. How far is the thing that you're thinking about to the actual site? And where is that other thing that you're thinking about in relation to the site? And I'll talk more about that in a second. Okay, so what's its direction? And you've got to remember, and this is quite important, every point that you're making must be in the context of the development you're being asked to consider. And in this case, it's some holiday chalets. It's not a supermarket or a housing development or a business park. But as I've said in the previous two lessons, it could be any type of development. So think about anything that's built by humans on a landscape. That could be what you're asked to consider. Okay, now you're going to have to use all of the information from the 2018 Higher OS map, and in the Google Classroom you will find it available to you. The map, there it is, and you're going to have to be able to zoom in and out of that map to actually get the evidence that you want. So as I open this document up, and you might be doing so whilst watching this video, I'm going to show you the kind of things that you are likely to be thinking about when you think about the development and the things you should probably avoid. Okay, once your map is opened, you're going to want to be moving between a detailed view of areas of the map as well as then looking for evidence from your symbols on your key. And you might even choose to use the scale to work out distances. But if you just remember the general rule that 1 grid square represents 1 kilometer, you should be able to give approximate distances. Now, if we just zoom in on this map, we can find our actual development, which we've been looking at, is down here. Let me just get a better zoom focus on that. It's right here. We can see there's Walsall End. And in the first two lessons, you had been looking at that actual location and then the surrounding grid squares. And we've already seen the corner of a motorway, as well as Hampton and Arden, this village to the north. Now what we can suddenly see is we've got a railway station in this village. Now we couldn't see that when we were just looking at the surrounding grid squares. We can see, for example, and quite importantly, if we just move up, we've got a National Exhibition Centre here, and we've got Birmingham International Airport. And these are all possible things you could think about. Now, I'm just going to do a couple for you, or do one for you. I'll talk about Birmingham International Airport in a second. But here's a few things that you shouldn't think about. So let's say you're thinking about this tourist development, and you've noticed there's a motor works over here. This is a car factory. And you would then think, well, people who stay in the holiday resort could work there. That would be a place they could find work. Well, clearly people coming to a holiday resort are not going to be looking to work nearby because they're on holiday. Now, if this was a housing estate, that motor factory, that motor works, could be a relevant employer for people who might move into this housing estate. But clearly that's not a relevant factor. Also, if let's just say, let's move over here, over in the town of Meriden, we've got a PH, that's a public house, we've got a pub. And you might say, well, there's a pub nearby and give me the grid reference. Now, in this case, you'd have to scroll down to the bottom and get the grid reference from the 24, where are we? Meriden. 24.3 and 81 over here, 9. Now, the reason you wouldn't give that pub is because it's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 or 5 kilometers away. And I suppose somebody might walk 5 kilometers, but would they walk over a railway line, over a main road to get to the pub here when there is a pub up here in the town of Hampton in Arden, and there's actually a little pub down here in Barston. So it's when you pick evidence, make sure that, especially if it's evidence that's from further away, like up here, you might say there's wind farms up here that might ruin the view. Well, could it ruin the view? Possibly, because actually this is higher land. This is 181 meters above sea level. There's no higher land in this area, so the people down here will be able to see the wind farm up here on this hill. So that might be a negative issue for development here. Likewise, if you want to talk about the M6 motorway up here, well, it's not the nearest motorway, so I probably wouldn't pick the M6 motorway. I'd probably pick this motorway here as being nearby for quick access. So be careful when you link to something. Make sure, would it be relevant? Is it too far away to be relevant? And in this case, it's a holiday development, so you're going to be picking for things that are more likely to be places people can visit, use, facilities they might be able to use, or things that might make them getting easier there, or make them more likely to come to this location. Okay, so that's the kind of evidence you're going to give. And I promise you I'd do one. So let's just have a look at Birmingham International Airport. The first thing I would do is I would say Birmingham International Airport lies, 1, 2, 3, about 4 kilometers away, and it's to the northwest. So you'd start a sentence with Birmingham Airport is 4.5 kilometers to the northwest of this proposed site. Now, I would say that's got an advantage and a disadvantage for this proposed site. The advantage would be international holidaymakers flying in can easily get from the airport to their place. As a matter of fact, they could catch a train in this station going down here and then catch a local taxi cab if they wanted to, or just get a cab from Birmingham Airport. So it'd be dead easy for people flying abroad to get to this location because there is an airport nearby. Would I give a 6-figure grid reference? In this case, because this is one of those cases where Birmingham International Airport covers a range of grid references, so I'd probably just give a 4-figure grid reference for one of the squares that Birmingham International Airport's in, like this one here. Rather than a 6. If it's a single location, if I was maybe talking about something that somebody might like to visit, like a museum here, I'd give the 6-figure grid reference. Now, I've said why it's a positive. Why is it a negative? Well, if we look at the runway, that means planes are going to be coming in or taking off in this direction, following the runway, which means they're going to be flying over Walsall End, so there's going to be a lot of air traffic noise for development in this area, so that's clearly going to be a negative site. So I need you to look across the whole map, look for things like this little dashed line, this little red or pink diamonds. There's another one over here. What's that? Why would that possibly be an advantage? Look for historical things that might interest things, tourist attractions that might interest people, and anything else, any evidence you can pull from the map that might make this a suitable place to develop. Not the site, but obviously why is the surrounding landscape suitable? And what you then want to do is just fill out your table here with what's the factor. So we started off with Birmingham International Airport. And when you do your explanation, you're going to have to incorporate distances, directions, and most importantly, grid references to go along with the point that you make if you were going to get a mark. So that's what I'd like you to do. And when you complete this, I'd like you to hand it in.